Going to continue throughout the day to do some exercises with us. So I'd like to introduce our next speaker, who is Neil Vigil. Neil is a third-year medical student at the University of Arizona College of Medicine. Neil has worked with us. In fact, Neil was the lead author on that suicide paper that I referenced. And Neil's done something really sensational. In addition to just identifying a major problem, he's really been actively working towards solutions and implementing some of those solutions. And he's been working with some of our colleagues down in southern Arizona as well. In addition to Neil being a third-year medical student, Neil was an Army captain and helicopter pilot for a number of years before he pursued his medical training. So, Neil, why don't you come up? And Neil's talk is here, Fostering a Resilient Organizational Culture. Welcome, Neil.
All right, test. Can everyone hear me? All right, good morning. Good morning. You know, those are some tough acts to follow. Incredible start to this summit. I want to thank you all for being here today to talk about such an important topic among EMS providers. Like Dr. Bobrow said, I worked with him on the suicide paper looking at suicides among EMS providers in Arizona over a 7-year period, with our findings being that significantly elevated rates of suicide. So it's an important topic, and I applaud you all for taking time out of your careers, your day, to be here to listen to the presenters. So before I get started, I just want to give you a little background about myself, because I am not a firefighter and I have not spent time as a EMT in the U.S. Outside of my military experience. So this is going to be a presentation from my experiences in the military. So a little bit about me. To begin, I enlisted in the Army out of high school as an Army medic in 2004. And from 2006 to 2010, I attended the United States Military Academy at West Point. Hold on a sec, technical difficulty here. All right, thanks. All right, so in 2004, I enlisted as a medic and then served for a couple of years before attending the United States Military Academy in 2006, 2010. Afterwards, I served as an aviation officer and Black Hawk pilot for 7 years before attending medical school. So I share this information with you to kind of give you the lens through which I view this topic and my experiences implementing resiliency in an organization. Later today, you'll hear me talk more so as a medical student and researcher when you receive the Golder Ranch presentation in the afternoon. But primarily for the majority of this presentation, you'll be hearing from my past experiences. All right, so I joined post 9/11. Little background, we all know what happened September 11th, 2001, but I'll kind of go through the background of the military I was serving in and kind of the crisis we faced during that decade. So October 7th, 2001, the invasion of Afghanistan took place, and then in 2003, the invasion of Iraq took place. In reference to how long senior leaders thought these conflicts would last, excuse me. So in reference to how long senior leaders thought these conflicts would last, the Secretary of Defense at the time, Donald Rumsfeld, said of Iraq, "I can't tell you if the use of force in Iraq today would last 5 days or 5 weeks or 5 months, but it certainly isn't going to last any longer than that." Hindsight is 20/20, but we could tell now that Afghanistan is still going on and is the longest running war in the US history, and Iraq ended in 2011. This was a time of constant deployment in the military, with the actual number of active duty DoD members not increasing at all. So with the same number of people, the deployments continued. So the constant deployments led to a significant strain on the military and their families, which led to some tragic events. One of the stories that stick out to me during this time was there was such a need for soldiers to deploy that they were extending 12-month deployments to 18-month deployments. And even at one point, a unit from Alaska had sent half of their soldiers home at the 12-month mark. And one of those soldiers got married after he got back from Iraq. And then they got called back. They said, "We need you for another few months." And that soldier, after getting married, went back to Iraq and ended up being killed in action. So it was a really tragic time. It's a really tragic time in the military. All right, so on the screen is a graph depicting the suicide rates across the major branches of the Department of Defense from 2001 to 2008. I'd like to highlight the light purple line representing the Army, which I belong to. As you can see, the rate is generally flat from at about 10 suicides per 100,000 from 2001 to 2004, but then nearly doubles to over 18 suicides per 100,000 from 2004 to 2008. And here is a consolidated graph depicting the suicide rates across the Department of Defense overall. And as you can see, the rates jump from 10 out of 100,000 in 2004 to over 16 per 100,000 in 2012. So clearly the data shows that we had a crisis developing. And I can tell you that at the time, we all knew what was going on. Thankfully, the Army took a shot at solving the problem by developing a formal resilience program in 2009, which I'm going to discuss in a little while. I remember hearing the word resilience for the first time after serving a couple of years in the Army. Like, what does that even mean, resilience? I think a lot of people, maybe even in this room, will say that. Like, what does resilience even mean? For a lot of people, the word and the concept seem pretty nebulous. So I'd like to share the Army definition that I've used so we can all get on the same page. So this may be a little different than some of the civilian training you've received. All right, so the Army defines resilience as the ability to grow and thrive in the face of challenges and to bounce back from adversity. All right, the Army Resilience Training Program was a collaboration between the University of Pennsylvania and the U.S. Army in 2009. Like I pointed out with the suicide rates charts from 2001 to 2004, the suicide wasn't really a problem going on. I mean, it was a problem, but from 2004 to 2008, we saw an incredibly increased rate of suicide in the military. So thankfully, the Army worked with the University of Pennsylvania, developed the modified version of the Penn Resilience Program to address unique aspects of military service. I found something interesting about the Penn Resilience Program. It was actually developed for middle schoolers, which I think looking back at my time as a medic early in the military is probably like a good choice of program to pick for who we were. All right, so the PRP has been evaluated by over 15 controlled studies, which is something I really like about this because a lot of times you hear resilience, you hear yoga, you hear mindfulness, and it sounds like it's not based in science, but there is a lot of science behind it and research. So this PRP itself, during a review, they found over 15 controlled studies that found reduced symptoms of depression and anxiety in participants with long-term retention. So the Army developed a formal 10-day trainer certification course taught by the University of Pennsylvania. And this was taught from 2009 to 2011. So this is really when the program was getting developed, and it was in collaboration with the university. Eventually, the Army said this is something we'll want to stick with, so they built the U.S. Army Master Resilience School, fully operational in 2011. So that school is kind of a train-the-trainer official certification course. It's run by the military based on the program that was developed. So in essence, if I could break it down to the kind of a simple approach of how we use a resilience program at the company level, the Army provides training and training material to our master resilience trainers at that training school. Then those trainers come back to our unit and provide monthly resilience training at the unit level. There's 13 formal resilience modules conducted at the company level, and if you're not familiar, a company in the Army is about 75 to 150 soldiers. And this is just one slide out of many modules that we have, talking about energy management and rhythmic breathing. I didn't plan that with JT, but this is just one of the modules they talk about. So it's a formal curriculum, but taught at the unit level. All right, so in addition to the formal Army training that I've received over the years, I've kind of developed my own personal view of resilience that I want to share with you. So a lot of times you hear, like, I want to be resilient. I want you to be resilient. You know, so that is an important part. The individual experience is important in being resilient. But I kind of break down resilience into 4 categories. First, the individual. So this would be like your past experiences, failures, successes, your personal, physical, and mental health, your sleep, your diet. Environmental factors include, you know, what's your family life at home? Do you have peer support? Do you have a connection to your community, whether that's church or maybe you're part of a bowling league? Formal training would be things like mindfulness-based stress reduction, master resiliency training in the Army, yoga that you go to, and then 4th is, which I'll talk about more, is organizational culture. So this would be like your job structure, stressors at your job, ability to seek help, biases held by leadership on mental health and work-life balance, etc. So one thing I want to share, which I think gets forgotten a lot, is resilience is not an individual responsibility. A lot of times I feel that we're placing the onus on the individual to be resilient, but we're setting up their work environment that they can't be resilient. They're going to fail, right? So it's not just you be resilient, it's an overall concept that includes your work life, your home life, your personal experiences, and your formal training. All right, so how do leaders help others to grow and thrive in the face of challenges and to bounce back from adversity? First, I think that preparing and leading organizational change is incredibly important. Second, set the stage for others to succeed in the face of challenges. And third, provide a path to overcome adversity. So I'm going to talk about these with you. All right, first, change is difficult, so don't try to do it alone. I think that building an organization that supports resilient members can be challenging, and depending on the culture, it can be really tough. But personally, I've seen the Army go from, the mentality of, they'd say, take a knee and drink water for every problem you have, to one where they're openly discussing mental health, PTSD treatment, family retreats, cognitive behavioral therapy for pain. It's really been incredible to see the changes that have occurred just in the time I was in the military. So with change, one of the things that I've found effective is recruiting organizational influencers. So this could be someone that's formally an influencer, socially, or non-organizational. So formal would be, say, like the boss. If the boss says we're going to do something, we're going to do something, right? Social would be there. In most organizations, there's people that have influence based on their experience, interactions with others. They may not be in a formal position of power, but if you can recruit them to help guide change in your organization, they can increase the progress forward. And non-organizational would maybe be bring in someone that specializes in resilience or yoga, someone outside of your organization so that others in your organization can see this isn't just something the boss thought of. This is like a real concept that we're working at. And I also found sharing goals and your plan with others really helps create buy-in and a shared vision with your subordinates. You know, I think no leader just decides we're going to do something without a plan and without, you know, a reason they're doing it. But if they don't share that with others in their organization, it can really seem, you know, like this is just another crazy idea the boss thought of that is just going to waste our time. But I think the more you can share the reason you're doing something with others, the more buy-in you'll get from them. Okay. Place value on building a resilient organization. This is one of my favorite because there's a lot of mandatory things you got to do in the Army as a company commander. You know, they say, this is required, this is required, this is required. I think one person added it up and there was something like 200 days of required mandatory training per year in the Army. And that's not including your general requirement for, you know, training your flight crews, practicing air assaults and all of that. So if you really want, if you really care about something, you need to place value on it. So how do you place value on it? You know, I found in my personal experience as a company commander, I incorporated resilience duty into their formal evaluations. So in some organizations, people say, I want to help, you know, build a wellness program. I want to help do X, Y, Z. You're like, some leaders say, yeah, go ahead, that's great. But if you're really valuing what that person is doing, you're going to tie it to their job performance and reward them for doing those things. You can emphasize resilient practices with rewards and competition. One of those we did was, you know, a physical fitness program. So you go to the gym X number of times. That's not required. You earn free time on a certain day. Things like that. And third, allocate time and resources to achieve your goals. So if you want a resilience program to be incorporated into your organization, you need to set time aside to do that training and provide the tools to do that training. All right, second, we want to set the individual up to succeed. First, I think it's really important to optimize the work environment. Things that I think paralleled my experience as an Army aviator and yours as EMS personnel is shift schedule and work hours. Sleep is an incredibly important part of your personal health and resilience. So focusing on reducing the number of, so if you say, I want you to make sure you're getting a healthy amount of sleep, but then you schedule that person to go nights, then days, then nights, all in the same week, you're failing that person. And again, you want to provide the resources they need to accomplish the tasks. There's a saying we had in the Army. It's called troop the line. So that means get your butt out of your office and walk around to wherever your troops are. Find out what they're doing, what their daily life is like. You need to know your people. So when you're assigning tasks, does this person have the ability to accomplish what I'm asking? And this has always been a fine line to walk, because I think like the busiest person in an organization is the one that can get things done, and sometimes that turns into, you know, someone that is a little lazier or not great at what they're doing ends up not getting assigned tasks because the boss is worried it won't get done. So I think it's a fine line to walk, but you need to ensure that you're providing challenging assignments in your organization, but not so challenging that that person is going to fail. Third, you want to understand common challenges your organization faces and fix what you can and prepare for what you can't. So there are challenges that can't be avoided in my line of work and your line of work as EMS providers. But that doesn't mean we can't do anything about it. We need to have a plan for bad calls, for casualties, etc. We know these things will happen and they're unavoidable in our line of work. Like to give an example of my time when I was in Afghanistan. We were 4 weeks in to our deployment to Western Afghanistan. It was actually Memorial Day of 2012, and we'd just taken over for the outgoing unit. You know, I was flying back from a long mission. It was 2 Blackhawks flying back, and we heard over the SATCOM radio, which, if you ever listen to this radio, it's crystal clear. It sounds like the person's in the aircraft with you. That's how good the radio is. And it was our brigade commander calling in a fallen angel report, which is when another aircraft goes down. And the senior warrant officer of our brigade had been shot down. And he was calling in the information on that. And so I knew, as part of the leadership team of the company, that there was a lot that was going to happen as soon as I landed. I was about 30 minutes out from our base. You know, it was a terrible thing that happened, but we had planned for when this happened. So when we got down, we initiated our plan with a media blackout, notified our family notification teams back in Germany. Our unit was from Germany, who then waited for the individual's family to be notified before notifying all the other families in the unit. We had a memorial service in country and talked with the company about what had happened, and it was tough. But we knew that that was part of our job. But we didn't just say, oh, this might happen, and if it happens, it's going to suck. We said, if this has happened, we're going to initiate this plan and make sure that we stay on task, because mission still has to continue. All right. At some point, everyone needs help. You know, and this might mean more help or less help depending on the person you are. But everyone will need help at some point. And so people should know what to do before that happens. You know, as part of my flight training, now send all pilots to SEER school, which is Survival, Escape, Resist, Evade, C, which is high-level SEER school. So it's about a 3-week course. It's tough. Teaches you what to do if you're shot down behind, you know, enemy territory, what happens if you're interrogated, things like that. One thing I loved about the school, well, first it taught me a lot about myself and bouncing back and resiliency, but they taught us that, you know, it's not if you're going to eventually end up giving information to the bad guy, it's when. And then how will you support others after they've had that happen. So I remember a story where we were pretty far into this course, and we're in a prisoner of war camp. There's about 20 of us in a concrete room. We're sitting there drinking out of a silver dog bowl. I don't know why that sticks out so much in my memory. Silver dog bowl here. Life sucks at this point, right? And they're taking one at a time to another place. And after the first one gets back, we're like, what's going on? Oh, they're interrogating us. We're like, okay, what'd you tell them? Oh, I told them X. It's all right, man. You know, everyone at some point, you know, eventually you have to give them something. And, you know, it made us feel a lot better, that knowing that, like, even if I failed, well, everyone failed, that thing in a sense, that we're there, your peers are there to help you. All right, develop and have a system in place for when someone needs help. So people need to know where to go, what to do when they need help, and you need to have a system in place for where to go and what to do when they need help. It includes things like mental health services, peer support, and mentorship. Finally, normalize and destigmatize seeking help. I would like you to kind of walk through this thought experiment with me. So you're the leader of an organization, and there's someone in your organization that is struggling with PTSD, and they're thinking of killing themselves. Would you help that person? Yeah, I think all of us would, right? Now let's say you're the leader of an organization, and there is a firefighter that is always late to work, drinks a lot, isn't pleasant to be around, and he's scheduled for a shift that starts in 30 minutes. And he comes to you and says, you know, I'm struggling with PTSD, I can't make this shift. I need to go get help. I share this with you to say that everyone wants to help, right? But you add more and more layers of complex situations, and it gets more and more difficult to say, I will help everyone that comes to me. So I want to say that everyone in your organization is watching the leaders and how they respond to those situations. So even if you think that person is sandbagging, if that person is making it up, if you don't respond the same way